back to the BPOS podcast. I'm here with Stan Hayes today from Operation BBQ Relief. Man, what an amazing last couple weeks you've had.
Yeah, it's been crazy, for sure.
I can't wait to hear all about it, get into it. I mean, obviously we've seen the footage and the carnage and all that sort of stuff on the news and on social media. But man, having volunteers like you and your team, doing some amazing things. I'm so excited to be able to talk about that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Let's start at the start, man.
Yeah.
We met, it's been a few months now, at barbecue headquarters on the Lake of the Ozarks, on the TAPS men's retreat. That was the first one that I was on. And man, it just couldn't have been a better one. So thank you for that experience. We'll talk more about that too. But man, let's hear about you and hear about how this all started and, all the good stuff.
So, the crazy part is this all started because of the Joplin tornado. I don't know if you think back, over 13 years ago, the Joplin tornado was really the second major event like that you could almost watch live unfolding. As the tornado was hitting the ground, there were helicopters following this, and you started seeing it, within minutes, this devastation path. And you saw it about a month earlier with the Tuscaloosa tornado. That tornado that hit Tuscaloosa just, was on the ground so long, but it was so far away. We were all thinking, how can we help? And we know a lot of barbecue people that went and helped that were down in that area.
Yep.
So a month later, this happens in Joplin. And it's a Sunday afternoon. I know hundreds of people that were sitting there watching it. I mean, it was live on the Weather Channel and all of these stuff. And I just remember that evening talking with my wife going, man, those people, I just don't even know. And as I was getting ready for work, the next morning, my wife looks at me and she's like, you need to go. And, being a little bit of a smartass, I'm like, well, yeah, I'm late for work already today for Monday morning staff meeting. She's like, no. You should get the barbecue guys that you go compete with and just go set up there and start cooking for the community.
Wow.
And, I sort of looked at her, registered a little bit, but I got in my car, heading to the office. I made it about 2 miles down the road from my house, and I was like, you know what? She's right. Who better than a bunch of barbecue guys who go compete against one another in a parking lot to just go set up with minimal needs and cook? No real agenda, just to cook.
Is that something that you had kind of brainstormed about in the past, or your wife just came up with the idea and it's like, you need to go help?
No, she's always been, somebody that's helped. And, I've been, one of those people, I guess, that, when a friend needs something, you're one of the people they call because they ran out of gas. You're one of the people they call because they need, help with something in the house, or, hey, I'm out of town and my wife needs something, So I think it's just being sort of that helper side of mentality that my wife's like, you know what, you guys should go. And we had just gotten into competition barbecue.
Okay.
So I'd been going to these and I'd been taking her out there and we were starting our own team and she saw the community that it is and, how much of a giving community and welcoming community. And she was like, that's what they need right now.
Yeah.
A welcoming face, somebody, but a good comforting meal as well.
Absolutely.
And so what was going to be 3 or 4 days and a few thousand meals, ended up being 11 days of cooking, about 14 days on the ground, and about 120,000 meals from a parking lot.
Wow.
And, it was probably, I think it was the third day we were sitting around at the end of the day, and we had a guy from a major poultry company who heard what we were doing and just brought a tractor trailer load of chicken with him and said, hey, can I help you guys? Literally showed up in the parking lot, didn't know us from Adam, said, hey, I brought a pit. I got a reefer full of frozen chicken meat and stuff. And
that's
can
amazing.
I help? And he said, look, I've been doing this since, before Katrina. He goes, nothing has been this coordinated that we've ever done. And he's like, how many times have you guys done this? We're like, day 3, ever, But, it takes all kinds, right? I mean, there was no one that walked into that parking lot on day one that said, well, I'm the best pitmaster in the country.
Right.
I should be doing this. And
right.
It's like, hey, my skill is I'm a project manager. Let me help you get this. Hey, I'm a kitchen manager. Let me help you with this. And it just flowed. And we see it today, 13 and a half years later, there's world champions in there cooking green beans. They're not over there, cooking the pig or the beef or whatever it is.
Right.
There is no ego. And that's probably what makes it, I think, so special to volunteers and people on the ground is that opportunity to give back, but to be part of it. They're not just sitting on the sidelines. They're getting their hands dirty.
Yeah.
They're getting in the pits. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was sitting there, and this guy goes, "Do you want to get up there?" And I was like, "Dude, I've unloaded enough pits in my life. You're here to do that. I want you to have that opportunity to get up there.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. It isn't tough. I'll show you how to do it." And I saw him this week. He's down there leading.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, you watch those people come in that really grab onto it, right? And see the impact that you make.
Yep.
And now they want to be part of it, and they want to be part of it. And I got people that just don't want to leave. I mean, last night I was like, "Hey, you still going to take me to the airport as you're leaving in the morning at 4:30 in the morning?" And he's like, "I was thinking about sticking around a little later." And I said, "You got to go home. I know you don't want to. You can come back, but you got some business to do. You've been telling me about it.
Yeah.
You got to go home." I said, "I know it's hard. It's hard to leave that parking lot sometimes and go home because you don't want to let somebody down."
Right.
But, the great thing is more people are flowing in to make sure that those people are fed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, everybody that I met, at the barbecue HQ was, amazing. So you have definitely fostered an incredible team.
I think it's part of that. Like I said, it's part of that community. I mean, barbecue is a pretty amazing group of people.
Yeah.
And it far exceeds the competition barbecue world that I thought it was when I started. It's there, but man, as we move outside of the barbecue world, that enthusiast, that backyard person that just wants to, they find something that's purpose.
Yep. All right. So has cooking always been part of your life?
Cooking has been. I mean, at different levels. I tell people my first really remembrance of cooking is with my mom's mom, my grandma.
Okay.
And as a little kid, they had a very small little house. I used to sleep on the couch when we go stay the nights there.
Right.
And Grandma would be up at 5 o'clock in the morning making cinnamon rolls, that kind of thing, homemade cinnamon rolls.
Yeah.
Go in there, sit there with her. Why not? And I just remember, watching her cook, helping her cook. My other grandma, lived on the farm, so it was different. I tell everybody, they both had gardens, but man, you go out to the farm and the tomatoes out there, and I can't remember a time being on the farm that there wasn't fresh tomatoes on a plate. And it's just different.
Yeah.
So both sides of the grandmas, and my mom was not a bad cook by any means. I joke around that my dad had no clue what he was doing when I was a kid, grilling and stuff. I didn't know it at the time until I got older, but I thought, isn't chicken supposed to be black when it's done? I mean, you start basting it with barbecue sauce 5 minutes after it gets on the grill and it turns to char, right?
Right.
No, that's not what it's supposed to be.
That's
right?
funny.
But my dad grew as well. I mean, he got to the point that he's the first person. My uncle, his youngest brother, is the first person I ever saw really smoking anything.
Okay.
And it was a brisket. He was living down here in Texas. He was smoking a brisket. We were at his house.
Nice.
And next thing I know, my dad's got a little smoker, and he's smoking a turkey for Thanksgiving, and then it just started going from there.
That's cool.
When I got out of college, one of the first things I did when I got my first apartment was go out and buy something that I could never use on the out there after I got it. I was like, oh, what? I can't have this on the balcony of a third floor apartment? Why not?
Yeah, go figure.
But it just went from there, and then the competition side just became you started seeing it on TV, and it started becoming more of a thing, and so it just grew from there.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's I travel in Central America and South America and Africa for coffee stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how many barbecue joints I find when I'm over in these other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was one I was in Brazil, and I was walking down the street, and somebody had pulled up in this little, barbecue kind of cart trailer type thing, and it was called Texas Smoke. That was the name of it, right? In Sao Paulo, Brazil. But yeah, man, I mean, and God, we're really lucky, man. There is no shortage of great barbecue in Texas, and particularly in Austin. There's a lot of good stuff here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, let's go back to when I first met you guys a couple months ago. So, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, but the TAPS program, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. It's really great, a really, really amazing group. And this particular retreat was for, I guess it was about 20 of us.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think it was about 20. It was all Gold Star dads. And that was my first experience where, you get there and you're just surrounded by people who are all in the exact same boat, and we don't know each other. We're just kind of staring at each other, and man, but we get there, and I mean, you guys were so welcoming, and the setup is so awesome. And the whole premise of the weekend, I mean, it was obviously, we did a lot of group sessions, and everybody got to talk and, just kind of work through some of the challenges we're having, but healing through cooking.
Yeah.
Right. That was the common theme. And so you guys had classes for us every day, usually multiple times a day. And it was, quartering a chicken and, seasoning properly. And I mean, it was really cool.
Yeah.
So how did all that come about?
So the whole idea about the camp was, how do we continue to give back when we're not active in disaster? And we had been doing stuff for first responders, veterans across the country using grilling and barbecue as life skills, as a way to bring people together, as a way to show them ways that they can give back in their own community if they're looking for that opportunity. And then we started thinking about it differently. What if we had a destination location where we could do the same thing, but we could bring the families together, And when we started looking at the need, at the end of the day, the suicide rate's too high.
Yeah.
First responder suicide rate isn't anywhere close, but it's the fastest growing suicide rate in the country.
Yeah.
So what's the easiest and what's the lowest hanging fruit? When you come from, I came from the corporate world. I always looked at what's the fastest way I can make an impact that I can sustain and move to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing to chip away. And to me, the fastest thing to do was, if you have a family that's struggling, is to keep them together. If you can keep a family from divorcing, one of the top triggers is divorce.
Okay.
When a spouse says, I'm done, it's one of the, top 3 triggers that a service member might have that may cause them to decide it's not worth it. And so the thought was, so as we're working through this, that was the thought process. So how do we bring them to a place? And, yes, barbecue is great, but food is the greatest unifier in the world.
Right.
If we can bring people together around the dining room table with others that are also going through similar things to show them that their network's much larger than they think it is.
Yep.
There are people out there that are going through what they're going through, and to show them ways to come together as a family. I said, look, I've watched people, didn't really think about it at the time, but I've taught, kids how to take a knife, and I've watched the parents' faces when you hand a 7-year-old a 4-inch paring knife, and they think that God, my kid's going to kill themselves with a 4-inch paring knife.
Right.
Right? But at the end of the day, what's the worst thing that could happen? Probably a knife cut.
Right.
It's not life-threatening. But what it does with the family at that point, it might be the first time that child sees mom and dad on the same page, talking to them, coaching them.
Yeah.
And when you see 2 parents coaching him and the kid sort of lights up because mom and dad are giving them attention in the same way, we're like, what they don't know is that kid just helped become a linchpin in bringing the family back together, because you're also teaching them with these life skills that you're giving them. when they start seeing things are tough, we start talking about when things are tough.
Yeah.
Going out and cooking together, bringing the family together, sitting around the dining room table. So all of this ideation that I'm talking about here are things that, I saw happen in little things that we have done over time.
Yeah.
And we just started talking about how we bring it together. And so then, as we're doing this, instead of reinventing the wheel, it's like, what organizations do we know that we could go talk to see if they'd be interested in the culinary therapy? I mean, because at the end of the day, you look at it, it's culinary therapy. It does the same or similar things that art does, that music does, that equine does. You're stimulating the same part of the brain, that they are. With one big distinction, everybody has to eat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everybody has to eat. Not everybody has to want to play an instrument or paint or things like that. So you give it's life skills on top of the fact that, when you're sitting there, when you and I were sitting there talking and, at the camp and you saw the grill your ass off seasoning and you're like, hey, I know Murph. Yeah. And we started talking, he's like, I was going to call him about this. I didn't know you had the seasoning already. And he just sent a bunch more stuff for this camp coming up.
That's so cool.
But that part of you sitting there thinking about which one of those you wanted to use, you may not think about it, but the creative side of your brain that was working at that point in time was helping you cope with, helping you relax, helping you forget all of the different things that the same thing that painting would be doing if you're trying to choose the color to the chord that you were trying to play or what you were doing with that horse.
Yeah.
It's there. The commonality's there. It's just there's more than, it's the old adage, there's more than one way to skin a cat. For us, I don't, I love horses. I grew up, around horses. But that's not something I'm active in, right? It's what is something that I'm active in that relates to the overall organization, grilling and barbecue. So you add that additional element of something that families love to do already, and you start giving them more skills.
Yeah.
So in a roundabout way, it was just really taking the passion that we have for grilling and barbecue and how we can give it to somebody else, and then say, oh, well, look at that. When you start studying what culinary therapy is, I tell you, I don't know that anybody ever heard that term before COVID.
Yeah.
I believe the first time I ever heard it was a group talking about how they just had a culinary therapy session. And they were sort of joking around, but they weren't.
Yeah.
And it was, they literally, their work sent like a HelloFresh box to their entire team to be on a call at 2 p.m.
Right.
And they have a chef come in there, open up your box, pull these things out, and they cook together as a team, all remotely.
Yeah.
But they're all in there and they're having fun, and they got they were told what they had to have, get a frying pan, get this, and have these things together. So, they spend an hour on their cooking together, finish eating it. They're sitting there talking. It's not quite the same, right? They didn't get to go try your steak. They didn't get to try,
Right.
But they get to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Well, it was like, wait a second. We can do this. We're already doing these classes. We're already down this road. We're just not using the correct terms. I mean, we're doing this already with these people.
Yeah.
And then we're adding an element of fun with some competition and stuff.
Right.
And, we had a group that, 2 weeks after you guys were there, and at first they're like, I don't know that these guys are really going to want to do culinary therapy. I was like, I said, I think you need to give it a chance. And, and we went back and forth for a little bit. And I said, what if I turned it into a competition? Now, you take a bunch of special forces guys and you throw out the, some terms like competition, and then all of a sudden everybody's ears up and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll try it. You kidding? Before we got done with, we didn't even get to the competition. They were all in. We got into the competition, then it became even greater.
That's awesome.
But it's all about, finding the right way to connect and figuring it out. And that's where I think the camp is going to continue to morph. The camp is going to find more ways. I hope to someday have groups that have horses to come out at the same time you're there, right? Same time a group comes in having, dogs down there that are, and have that culinary side of things coming through. that I think is one of the most important things is that you can't be stale. You can't just say, hey, this is the way I'm going to do it.
Right.
You got to look at how we can, I met a group that they bring veterans to places like Lake of the Ozarks to go fishing, to do wakeboarding.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these different groups that as I started looking at all these different things, I was trying to work with a wakeboarding group that they were bringing people from all over the country. They're out of Alabama, but they were going to be on Lake of the Ozarks. And so we were talking, and ends up they were down at the party end of the lake, and I'm like, you guys are crazy. You're going to take them out at that end of the lake? You're going to do it in the middle of the week, right? When no one, when it's a fraction because the other end of the lake is so busy. But you were there. There was time you were sitting out at the dock. You didn't see a boat in either direction.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And that's that little piece of it is why we chose that area.
Yeah.
So we wanted it to be quieter. We wanted to be able to bring people in, and we wanted to be able to use it so it wasn't just the food. It was the nature. It was the respite side of things. And it was some of that, little bit of peace to be able to also reflect at times.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, there's probably not a time that doesn't go by where I may go, jump on a golf cart with a cup of coffee and go sit at a bench looking out at the water for 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff.
So that's really, all of us that sat there around that table, multiple times as we started throwing things against the wall to make this a reality. It's been this culmination. So, it was pretty amazing when we did the first camp as a sort of, I'll call it a test, and met Tina and said, okay, it's funny because we were, Heather was working for me and I said, hey, I like Tina. Does she like her job? But she did, I knew how much she knew just from doing that first camp.
Yeah.
And seeing the people that she brought and the excitement that, man, if I could harness that and bring that over and just happen to be the right time for everything, and then we go forward and we say, hey, let's do this with taps and let's do 3 of them, see how it goes. And like I said, tomorrow starts the last camp. We started with that first camp and I was blown away.
Yeah. The first camp you did was all siblings, wasn't it?
No, this one's siblings.
Oh, this one is. Okay.
This one's siblings. The first one was all young adults. So they're 18 to 26.
Right. Yeah.
All had lost somebody. A majority of them had lost their dad. But, you had one that lost their twin, and the twin was a brother.
Yep.
You had one that, had been married for like less than 6 months, but had been with their boyfriend for like 4 years. So it wasn't just all dads.
Yeah.
There was, but the impact, and we did, you had John David there as your chef, but they had Sonny, and Sonny's Sonny's probably in her early 40s. She is a gym rat now, but she'll tell you she's a gym rat because she has MS.
You're right.
Right. And she got into it because she realized, she found that by working out, it would help her, but she was working through her own PTSD that she had and the trauma that she went through in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And she told the kids about this, the connection she's made.
Yeah.
It's pretty
powerful.
empowering.
It's super powerful.
For these young ladies that were there, but even more so, how much it also affected the young men that were in that crowd.
Yeah.
So trying to find the right balance and the right people. John David wanted to be there because, his kids are that age.
Yeah.
And he's been coaching softball, forever. And so he was like, and I was like, yeah, but I got a better one that I need you at because I think it's, it's also right down your alley as a retired, veteran. You have a connection you can also make with these men.
Yeah.
And this one, we have a school teacher who turned his passion for grilling and barbecue through Next Level Chef to where his high school basically built a culinary program around him now.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he's no longer a gym teacher. He is now, using the culinary side with these kids, that are in high school. And so they're letting him come to the camp for these young adults as part of his job. He's not having to take days off.
That's amazing.
And he built this platform where he's got millions of followers now.
Yep.
He lives outside of Philadelphia, so he was literally 2 weeks ago doing a tailgate with Jason Kelsey. Sitting there cooking with Jason Kelsey, which he had told me about earlier. He's like, yeah, I really hope I get to do this because he does a lot of stuff with Kingsford, and Jason had just signed on. He's like, yeah, I'm hoping I get to meet this guy because he's a huge Eagles fan. Next thing you know, I see him cooking with him.
That's amazing.
But it sucks because I'm not going to be there this week. I told him I'd love to be there, but there's more pressing matters right now.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, man. Let's talk about what the last few weeks have been like.
Yeah. So, Hurricane Helene, my team, activated pretty quickly, got equipment ready. We had already been watching for this storm.
Okay.
We have a weather service we use, a meteorologist that we've been using since about 2018, who predicts the weather, and he's been quite accurate for us. I mean, we move different pieces of equipment around the country based upon predictions because we know if we do it right, it saves us money than doing it in the heat of the moment.
Yep.
So we'll pre-stage, during hurricane season, we might be moving stuff from Texas and the Midwest down to the Gulf Coast, sort of that Atlanta area where you can hit Gulf Coast, you can hit the East Coast. And we've been doing that for years now. And he kept, hey, is this one? No, this isn't the one. Is this one? No. This one might be a little bad, but it's not going to be the one. And he finally was like, this one's going to be the one.
Wow.
And he tracks the weather cycle. So the weather cycle split. And when Milton came around, he's like, hey, guys, we got a problem. This is remnants of this, and this cycle coming back around, and it's a perfect storm and what the Gulf waters are. So we knew after we got on the ground, Helene is the biggest disaster we've ever done. Mm-hmm. And it's going to go down in history as one of the largest disasters to ever hit the United States because of the damage that it did from Florida, Georgia. It was still a Cat 2 as it was passing, east of Atlanta, going through Augusta, Georgia. It was a Cat 2. It's almost unheard of to ever have a hurricane that far inland still as a Category 2 hurricane.
That's crazy.
The damage, goes up into Virginia and curls around there. It affected about 8 states, really. We ended up, with 4 sites, two in Florida, 1 in North Carolina, and 1 in East Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we were running those sites simultaneously. We've only done 2 sites, major sites before. So, we more than doubled what we had ever done. And splitting all the equipment, we're not as efficient when you split equipment, you're not as efficient. You don't
right.
There's sort of that safety in numbers. But it also shows the growth of the team that we have and our ability to do that, the growth in our volunteers. But then here we are, I'm heading down to Tampa, and all of a sudden, as we're talking about Milton, I'm like, guys, you got to have your plan to bug out, And 2 days later, 3 days later, the state's coming to us going, we want you to make your last meals on Sunday. We're like, we think we have time to do Monday. And they're like, we want you to do it on Sunday, and we want you to do it on Sunday because we don't want you to serve meals on Monday. Because if you're serving meals, you're going to keep people from potentially leaving.
Gotcha.
And it took us that minute to get that aha, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, we can help people get out of the area because we're in Tampa at this point in time.
Yeah.
We're in Pinellas Park right there. We're on a barrier island essentially for, it's protecting the bay and everything. And at this point, they're talking storm surge of 4 foot. At least in the area where our warehouse was. And I'm like, all right, guys, we got to get all of this packed up and you guys out of here. And that's what we did. We served our last meals on Sunday. We packed up. We moved everything up to Tallahassee and into Georgia and sent everybody home. Said, we're going to go back in, but we're going to wait for Milton to clear because I'm just not down with putting anybody in harm's way. Right. It's not worth it. So, I flew home, spent a few days at home, and then I looked at it and went, man, this is going to be big. And I had plans to go to East Tennessee and to North Carolina to visit those sites because we'd never done anything so far removed where something this big that I haven't been on the ground.
Right.
So I wanted to get on the ground. I wanted to thank everybody, but I also wanted to see, and talk to people. So, I just said, I looked at my wife and I said, hey, I got to pick up a smoker to take, from St. Louis to Johnson City, Tennessee. At the same time, I got to pick up something in East St. Louis tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to take to Hendersonville. I'm getting ready. I'm going to leave here in about 2 hours. And my wife's like, I expected it. She knows this time of year now.
Yeah.
So get on the road. So I basically spent from Monday night through Tuesday driving, hit horrible traffic outside of Louisville, spent basically a whole day driving, get in there the next day, spend half a day with one team, drive over to the other location, spend a half a day with that team, then start heading towards Florida, watching the weather, and just waiting for the right moment to make sure that, because I told my team until we decide it's go, I don't want anybody to leave their house. I don't want anybody, to put themselves in a position that, if it turns or whatever. So we hit that moment. We're like, okay, it's time to go. We're going to head for the warehouse in Pinellas Park, and we're going to find out, and that whole day after it came through, I'm trying to get a hold of people.
Yeah.
My volunteers in that area, one, to make sure they're okay. Two, to see if anybody, if they are okay and family's taken care of. Hey, can you swing by? Is the warehouse underwater? Is it okay? Because we lost cameras and power at about 10:30 that night as Helene was coming through. So at the time there, it was dry. we had no idea.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a hold of the, through the emergency operations center. Hey, can you send, a sheriff by, this address? Hey, can you swing your helicopter over the top of this area if possible? See if this is okay, because this is where we're heading.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we'd been looking at a larger site during Helene that we had just gotten basically approval for during Helene right before we bugged out. So we're like, hey, do we still have this site? Yeah. Well, let's make sure it's not underwater because it's about a half mile away.
Okay.
So we go from 2,000 square foot warehouse and having to make stuff happen in an industrial parking lot to now having a 250,000 square foot warehouse, loading docks to the warehouse where we can cross dock, and about probably 8 acres worth of parking lot area surface to now be able to set up the village that we know we're going to have to.
Yeah.
So in 48 hours, 24 hours, we're serving meals. 48 hours, we're serving substantial, 15,000 meals. 72 hours in, we're hitting, in the upper 20s. And yesterday, in Pinellas alone, we hit 50,000 meals. We hit,
unreal.
And then you look at what we were doing in all the other locations, and yesterday became the largest day we've ever done.
Yeah.
Over 60,000 meals, but spread across 3 different states.
Yeah.
So
that's huge.
The impact of now Helene and Milton combined is just great. I mean, the need's going to be in the Appalachia area there around Asheville. It's going to go through the winter. I mean, it's already getting down in the 30s at night.
Wow.
So, during the height of it, there's no gasoline. So there's side-by-sides and four-wheelers stuck on the side of mountains because people didn't have enough gasoline to get back out because they kept finding need. We started getting these Jeepers coming in. Hey, can I take, I'm here to pick up 150 meals, and I'm taking it to this area. And we're like, so how are you getting it to that area? Well, I'm not getting it there. I'm getting it to this rally point, and I got a guy who's got his horse and 3 pack mules.
Jeez.
And it's like, we just went back 100 years.
That's crazy.
Right? You know, he's like, yeah, but they just need water and some grass.
Yeah.
And I can keep them going. And so, you know, one day they're like, we're taking your meals into this little community church up in these mountains. At the same time, your meals are going in on this meal. They're taking on, you know, propane heaters.
Right.
And tomorrow we're going to take more meals into them, but we're going to have propane bottles.
Mm-hmm.
And so, everybody's like, well, we're helicoptering stuff in. It takes a pretty good helicopter pilot in those mountains to be able to do that. Now, they started doing stuff where they were dropping them or they were, you know, sling loading them and off, you know, being able to hover and offload.
Okay.
But still, you know, that still takes a pretty good pilot. And, you know, you got to have, you know, most of the pilots that I know came out of the military that are doing those.
Right.
Yeah. They're the ones that'll buzz the trees and chop it down to the point they feel they can land, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that know that they can hover on the side of a mountain because they've done it before.
Right.
You know, it's not the ordinary the pilot that's taking you on the scenic overlook that's doing this, right? And so, you know, we've seen a lot of them going in there.
Yeah.
But the stories of the pack mules, the Jeep groups, the things like that, you just started seeing, I think, a little bit of that.
That's crazy.
But you're seeing, you know, everybody's talking about it, and this is not a political piece by no means about how no one wants the government, you know, or the government's not helping. It's not that the government's not helping or trying to help, because I'm seeing it, because they're asking us for their help to help up in there.
Right.
Right. It is the people don't want it. I mean, there's a reason that they live in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Is they don't want that kind of help. They
Yeah.
want to be removed from that area. And so it's, you know, but at the same time, a good comforting hot barbecue meal
Heck yeah.
opens a lot of doors for people. And it's opened a lot of doors for us and some of our partners to help get those heaters up there, to help get other supplies into the area versus, you know, a governmental vehicle or somebody that might be perceived as part of the government.
Right.
And those are the, you know, that's the hard part because, again, I don't want to be political, so I don't play in those games.
Yeah.
So, look, I'll help out everybody. And if that means you sit down here and they have an opportunity to talk to you, I'll let you be here.
Sure.
But, you know, it's the tough part about it up in those mountains especially. Now, you get down to totally different, you know, picture when you get down to Florida.
You're right.
I mean, we, you know, on the way over here, I'm texting with, I was telling you about this young lady that started this amazing group, the Girls That Walk, St. Pete Girls That Walk, and now there's a St. Pete Boys That Walk, and there's a running club that's joined them, and all of this. But you know, she started this just to get active and meet people and get out, and they've been mucking out houses, they've been going to senior areas. So she messaged me going, "Hey, can we get 100 meals to get into this mobile home park that we just found?" You know, there's still no electricity, you know, and I mean, coming from the Midwest, you know, you and I know what a mobile home park is. It's like it's a magnet for tornadoes around here, it seems like.
Yeah.
Well, you get into that same kind of straight line winds, and those people they're reeling from it, and most of them are seniors.
Right.
Most of them, you know, you get in there, they lost their cars from storm surge, the damage, trees, everything else. So it's been one of those things. We just keep hearing this.
Yeah.
We keep hearing this. And, you know, the media is showing a lot of it, but they're not showing, you know, they're not going into the mobile home parks. They're not going into that. They're showing the beach houses.
Right.
Like the person that lived on the beach, most of them, even if they didn't have, you know, insurance, they have the wherewithal to take care of it.
Right.
Those seniors in those areas don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tough part, you know, and we want to help everybody. I mean, we're sending meals out 3.5 hours one way,
Yeah.
you know, across the state. That's how, I mean, this thing luckily it cut through the state and it didn't cut up the state
Yeah.
because of its size and the amount of rain it was bringing too.
That's insane.
So you just ever seen anything like this,
Yeah.
you know, back to back that quickly?
That's devastating. And all right, so then you're haven't ever been, you know, in one of these. You basically set up your cook area,
Mm-hmm.
And then people come in and take a number of meals and start delivering them?
So what we do is we'll open up a hotline number, and we tell everybody it's a bulk of 50, increments of 50.
Okay.
Basically, that's what a full aluminum pan is.
Got it.
It is about 50 servings, protein, 50 servings a side.
Okay.
So we'll put that together. But then we get, we start getting church groups that want to feed their church. We get civic groups who want to take out, and set up a relief site. But because we know the hospitality industry right now is wrecked in those areas, I mean, that's one of the biggest, parts of the beach areas are those mom and pop restaurants.
Right.
I mean, those businesses, food trucks, the one thing about it is many food trucks, they have a way to get out of the way. Many of those food trucks went inland.
Okay.
Where that bricks and mortar restaurant might be destroyed down there. But we can take a food truck who's now out of business as well because the brewery's not open that they used to go sit up next to, or that food court that they might set up, over the weekends, for festivals and stuff aren't happening.
Yep.
So now we get them, we partner with them, we pay them, they take our meals, they go set up in a Walmart parking lot, a Lowe's parking lot, a civic center, things like that. And now they're taking out 2,000 meals.
Wow.
And all of a sudden you got 10 of those going. You got, 20,000 meals going out at lunchtime out of food trucks, just helping people in the community. Now you're helping a small business, stay afloat.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking like the socially responsible, food truck business in their community, helping give back to their community.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for all of us. We get more meals out. The state gets what they want, and the small business doesn't go under because of a storm.
Man, that's fantastic.
So, it's part of the circle of life piece, I guess, if you want to look at it as how do we all get to, how do we all help each other to make sure that our neighbors are taken care of?
Yeah. So what is a typical, if there is a typical, like day in the life when you hit the ground?
So the first 72 hours, we call it the 72 hours of chaos.
Okay.
I tell my team, you can get mad, you can cuss at each other, you can do whatever, but you always have to remember that during the 72 hours, you can't hold a grudge of something that somebody else did that you didn't like, or they didn't do it the way you wanted to, because it's pure chaos.
Right.
You get through the 72 hours of chaos, because here we are, we're setting up a massive site. I had 3 guys. Normally I have 6 guys.
Wow.
But I got guys up in, North Carolina. I got guys over in Tennessee having to take care of these sites, run all the electrical, make sure these things are happening. So the chefs and the pitmasters and just the people that are there, that have a heart to give, can start helping the community.
Right.
So these guys probably work at least 16-hour days to set up an electrical grid, because you're basically setting up a field kitchen in the middle of a parking lot.
Right.
The one thing that we didn't have to have for this location is it's got an awning that's about, I'd say, at least 60 foot wide.
Okay.
By about the length of a football field.
Wow.
So now I don't need a tent. I've already got cover.
That's
to
great.
be able to cook under. And it's tall enough I can bring semi trucks through and and have my dry goods, and I can have my So now it's setting up. How do you house that many people? So it's going to the state saying, hey, you want us to do that? We need to be able to house people. All my bunkhouses are up in North Carolina, Tennessee. I shipped them out there, after Milton was coming, because they needed more resources up there.
Mm-hmm.
And we were getting state resources down in Florida. We weren't up in North Carolina or in Tennessee, to the point of, being able to, they're just not big enough states to have the resources to bring in bunkhouses. So I think when I left, we had 6 bunkhouses on the ground, 2 shower houses, 2 bathhouses, plus our bathhouse. We were able to get some bathhouses up and shower houses up in in North Carolina. And just luckily, in Tennessee, I'm working out of my warehouse, that has some facilities right there.
Yep.
We were able to get, a local, porta potty company to bring stuff out. So now all of a sudden we're setting up this. So outside of the first 72 hours, you're still working the same probably number of hours. It's just different.
Okay.
You're not humping and trying to solve problems, and you still have to, you're going to have power go down. You're going to have a generator. Something's going to happen. So we're sitting there with generators sitting on the side, just so when that generator goes down, you don't want it to, but it's inevitable that something's going to happen.
Right.
Because if you didn't have it one there, what would happen. You just hope that you have an extra one there and it never goes down, right?
Right.
So once we get past that 72 hours, yesterday was what I'd call the first typical day. So, my alarm's going off at 5:15. I'm getting up. I'm out there before 6 a.m. because 6 a.m. breakfast is starting, and they're going to start the safety meeting.
Okay.
Because he wants, pitmaster running the kitchen wants to start processing food by 7 a.m. because he's got to get meals going across the state to St. Lucie, 3.5 hours away. That first truck has to be out of there by 8 a.m. So we got to be doing that.
Yeah.
Where, the guy who's doing the sides and getting all the vegetables and everything going, he's got to get his crew working. They had everything already pre-staged, so they're just turning on tilts at 6 a.m. when they walk out.
Okay.
I mean, there's many mornings I'm walking out with a cup of coffee at, 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, and if usually they beat me out there at this point in time. But if not, I'm over there turning the skillets on, getting them hot so they can start rolling that.
Yeah.
I'm checking pits. Last night, after I got done packing and taking a shower, it was 11:15. I took my shower and sent my wife a text and said, "Hey, I just got out of the shower. I'm doing my walk around for the night, and then I'm going to bed because my alarm's going to go off at 3:50 this morning, so I can head to the airport."
Yeah.
But that's why we try to keep people on like at most a 7-day cycle,
Right.
because more than 7 days of that just wears you down to the point that's when mistakes happen.
Yep.
That's when injuries happen. So even our own guys, like I told you earlier, people don't want to leave.
Right.
They don't want to let somebody down. We're like, you know what? You don't have to leave today, but you can't stay here. You cannot come on the cook site.
Right.
You can't come in and do anything today. You want to stay around? Go watch a football game.
Right.
Go catch up on whatever TV show that you watch that you haven't got to watch.
Yeah.
Go do some work. Many of these people have their own businesses. They're running their own business and they're coming in and volunteering. So, we're very cognizant of fatigue and also the mental side of it.
Yeah.
You start getting out there. And we've had a lot of first responders and veterans, that have seen a lot. And then it affects them going back out there because, let's face it, you're going out to what looks like a war zone.
Mm-hmm.
You're going out to destroyed homes pushed over, homes in piles, what little people may have left across their front lawn. And it can take a toll on you. And I grew up, in the Midwest, always looking for the tornadoes. I mean, I used to call a tornado siren, like a dinner bell. Hey, go outside and see where the tornado is. You didn't go to your basement,
Right.
Today we know a little bit. We're a little bit more educated, going, hey, you shouldn't really do that, right? But we still do it.
Yes, yeah.
But you also saw, the impact of it, and there's a lot of people that haven't seen that kind of damage.
Yeah.
They haven't lived through that, and they get out there and then they start hearing the stories, and hearing, about somebody's loss. And it gets even worse if they lost somebody during that, which has been, those are the most grueling.
Yeah.
I've talked to many people who lost everything, lost those wedding pictures, lost the grandchildren's pictures, lost this, and it's bad. But when you talk to somebody and they start telling you about how they lost their spouse,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God.
Yeah.
You're like, you take for granted, I do, that I'm having a pulled pork sandwich, I'm
Right.
like, geez, you just went through the worst day of your life and I'm just giving you a pulled pork sandwich. And it took, it goes back to Joplin for me. for a little old lady to tell me it's not about the pulled pork sandwich. It's about the fact that you're here.
Yeah, it's huge. Man, I told so the girl that owns the gym that I go to, when we lost Connor, she immediately, started this meal train for us, right?
Yep.
And we've participated in those before, for people. And dude, I mean, just the idea of cooking a meal, those first couple weeks, it was like there's so much shit that you have to get done and figure out and go through. I mean, having a hot meal.
Yeah. It's the last thing that you think about. You don't think about yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's huge. I mean, what you're doing is. And that lady's right. It's not about the pulled pork sandwich. It's about, the fact that you're there and you're doing it. Yeah. And they don't have to.
Yeah. And it goes, I go further when I'm talking to the volunteers, that new ones. I mean, look, it's about them not thinking they're forgotten.
Yeah.
Right? It's about, the love that you're showing them just through the act of being there.
Yeah.
And again, that little old lady taught me a hell of a lot, in the first days of Joplin I tell everybody, man, when I think, God, is it going right? I think back to the little old lady that I watched her roll in that parking lot. When she rolled in that parking lot, all I saw was stuff piled to the top of her car. And just thinking to myself, that's everything she probably has.
Right.
She got out of the car, glasses shattered, broken, trees probably flying debris. And, she asked, I heard there were meals, and I showed her the line. But it was her back at that same spot now crying, to thinking, oh, my God, what happened?
Yeah.
To have her just say, I got to know who to thank, right? It's, I don't know if you ever got to that point where you're like, man, I don't even know who to thank yet, right?
Yeah.
Because everything that's going on, right? Like I said, you forget about taking care of yourself.
Right.
And this lady, it was probably the third day when she was coming out finally looking for, something, but she at least had a car to drive.
Right.
There's people right now who lost their cars because they decided they were going to stay because they were they were in a condo on the third floor, so the storm surge wasn't going to get them. They had hurricane shutters. They thought they'd be okay, but now their cars are gone.
Right.
They have nowhere to go anywhere. If they did go somewhere, I had a friend of mine call me, and they're like, hey, do you know anybody that might have some gasoline? I was like, yeah, I can get some gasoline. I made all my guys bring gasoline and diesel, depending on what they were driving.
Right.
Car. I said, what do you need? And she's like, it's not for me. It's for a friend. Monday she's got to get to the doctor. She has terminal cancer, and her pain management was supposed to be last week, the day before the hurricane hit and they closed. And she's got 9 miles to empty. She spent yesterday, her husband and her spent 4 hours in line to get gas to run out 3 cars in front of her.
Oh, shit.
I'm like, give me the address.
Yeah.
Hey, do they need some meals? Hey, I'll take some meals to the whole trailer park. And, that next morning I get a text. Their power came on. Her husband found gasoline at 7 a.m. this morning. She said, thank you, but give it to somebody else because that may need it more than her. And that's the other thing, right? The resiliency and wanting to pay that forward, somebody that's going through so much. I have volunteers that have been impacted previously from disasters. And it's their way of paying it forward.
Yeah, yeah.
Going out there and giving another community, what they got.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing. I tell you, it's humbling to sit back and have people come up and tell their story to you. And, well, you don't know this, but you fed me, in this disaster, and have, sit on the other side.
Yeah. It's incredible, man. I mean, what does it take to run an organization like this? I mean, money-wise, sponsorships.
Yeah.
I mean, how does it all work?
So, I mean, we start at the very basic, right? We were built, by volunteers.
Yep.
And so for me, a volunteer's, every bit, if not more important than the money. Because if I don't have the volunteers,
Right.
I don't serve any meals. Nothing ever happens.
Okay.
I say nothing happens without volunteers. And, we've got a database that's, I think, pushing 12, 13,000, across the country. Some are active, some aren't, of that, you probably got about 10% that are really active.
Okay.
But with that active, that's where the sponsorship comes along. That's where companies see the good that you're doing because they're seeing it from the people that are buying their product. They're seeing it from, people that know people, and that's how it's all happened. I mean,
right.
Our first sponsorship is, the company that we use their smokers today. I won't say I'm the most smokers of any of their customers or anything, but I'm probably in their top 10.
Yeah.
I probably have, I think we're up to 24, 25 of their smokers.
Wow.
But they're such a generous family, I mean, I'm sitting there and they're pulling records to see, in Tennessee and Virginia and North Carolina, South Carolina, to see who they've sold pits to in those areas, to see if we can contact them to find more pits at the time when we were at the height of things getting to the height of things during Helene, and I didn't have enough smokers. I'm like, man, I got to find some more smokers.
Yeah.
Then you get into, gas companies, meat companies, all of these different things. And that helps.
Yeah.
But it's really that person that says, hey, yeah, every time this happens, I donate $10, $50, whatever, $500, whatever it is.
Right.
It's those individual donors that then also go in there and tell their friends and family, hey, I'm supporting this group, you should too.
Yep.
Or, hey, if you can help this group, or whatever they say. It takes all of those things combined to make it happen. I mean, right now, our meal, with the cost of everything, it's just gone crazy. But I mean, we're probably averaging between $5.25 and $5.75 for a meal.
Okay.
And, in the early days, I would be like, that's so high. The other day, somebody said, is it really that much? And I said, when was the last time you went to McDonald's and bought yourself a double cheeseburger, a fry, and a Coke? Because it's like $7 and something, depending on what state you're in with tax and everything else. Like, you cannot buy the meal that we're producing that is a pulled pork or a shredded beef sandwich with a hot side, a fruit cup, and a bottle of water.
Yeah.
For $5.75. I mean, you certainly can't go to I challenge anybody to go to a barbecue restaurant in the state of Texas and find a shredded beef sandwich, a hot side, and a second side for $5.75.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't happen.
No.
The cost of beef alone is just skyrocketing.
It's
crazy.
crazy.
In fact, if we didn't have the generosity of companies donating that, everybody asks me, why don't you guys do more beef? Because if I have to pay for it, it's not financially responsible for me to do so.
Right.
If it's 3 times the cost of pork or poultry, why would I go do it?
Yeah.
I
can't feed as many people.
I can't feed as many people.
Right.
It's not financially responsible. I'm not using donor dollars, I think, correctly.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yep.
So we focus on that. But that's why we look for those companies that are in that business to say, hey, you should align with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should come with us and let us tell your story of how you're helping feed the masses.
Yeah.
And we could probably do a better job of that, but at the same time, we do a pretty good job of showing their product going out and how it's helping people in the community.
Yeah.
So inevitably, a big disaster like this, we get recognized by other organizations, other groups that want to align themselves with good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some that pop out of the woodwork that I'd never think about, and that's where I think, wow, okay. It's that heart to give, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't have to even be related to barbecue or be related to disaster or anything like that. It's just a company that wants to give back and sees that a hot meal makes an impact.
Yeah. That's huge. Are there any sponsors that you want to shout out?
Oh, I think right now you have to talk about National Beef.
Okay.
They're just outside of Kansas City. They're what I call a Kansas City based company, and they donated a truckload or a couple of truckloads now of beef shoulder. Right. I mean, these things were massive. I mean, I'm like, how the heck I can't get a third shelf on this one smoker that I should be able to get a third shelf on because they're so thick.
Yeah.
The other one's Seaboard Foods. Their commodity brand that people would buy is called Prairie Fresh in the market. They're the second largest pork producer in the United States, and they're based in Kansas City.
Wow.
There's a company called Feral Gas, propane company.
Okay.
And they own a little propane tank company called Blue Rhino.
Oh, well, there you go.
Blue Rhino was the second company to ever say, "Hey, we believe in what you're doing."
Oh, that's awesome.
And it paired really well with the smoker company, which is called Old Hickory Pits, out of Cape Girardeau, Missouri, because they're propane fired with wood for the flavoring. Which is huge. I mean, I know we're in Texas, and people might shoot me for saying it because of that, because it's not a stick burner, because we're not cooking with all wood. But the fact is, it also gives my volunteers a good sleep because we can load the pits at 6 o'clock at night, turn them on at 9 o'clock at night, run pork butts overnight, and you just need one or two people to go check them, make sure no propane or no issues happen with electrical overnight, instead of having people out there feeding all night long. Yeah. Even those guys that are checking can at least get some nap, get some sleep in, set an alarm, go back to sleep. Yeah. So for us, those are the big ones. I mean, as we talked about it, I went and met with a big one here just down the street with Yeti. I mean, Yeti's been with us for, I think, 5 years or so now. Yep. 6 years maybe. And it's, as when we started working with them, I was like, look, what I'm trying to do is improve our sustainability. We're using a ton of aluminum pans. We're using a ton of this. You can't. Your coolers are amazing, but I can't have that many coolers on the ground to keep all this stuff hot. Right. But what you can do is, you can help us with things like hydration. Yep. We use the Yeti silos out there, and we try to, we'll never get away from water bottles as much as I'd love to. Right. It's a necessary evil out there. Yeah. But if I've got those there now, you saw at the camp, we used them to refill bottles for Gatorade. Yep. And it was hot. While you were there, it was warm. It was warm. So we have those available all the time for our volunteers on the ground. Well, they help us with that, right? Mm-hmm. They give us the product to be able to do those things. Yeah. So we can reduce the consumption of plastic bottles. Yep. We use this thing called a Cambro, and they make a very dense foam box now. Okay. They used to be roto-molded, sort of like a Yeti and all this. And, and some of the bigger nonprofits still use them to this day, but they're inefficient. They're heavy. If you don't replace gaskets often and everything, they leak. Right. We did a test with one of theirs and one of these new, and when I say new, we figure we got about 3 years out of these. Okay. But the price point is less than a tenth. Yeah. So if I can buy one of them for $40 versus $550, plus if I lose one of those, I'm a little less pissed, than losing one of the other ones when they go out in the field. So for us, Cambro started making this box, and now we've built our production around that box, so we don't have to use so many aluminum pans. Yep. We use a heavy mill liner goes in there now, so you got a poly liner going in there. Okay. And it keeps it hotter longer, because if I break it up into pans, now every bit that's in the air, it's reducing heat. Yeah. I pour it into a heavy mill, zip tie it. Now I keep all the steam and everything inside there, keeping it moist and everything else. Yeah. So when we did the study, the first year we started, the first full year we started using them, I kept red beans and rice being flown over from Fort Lauderdale to Grand Bahamas. The last one that was opened the day I was on the island had dropped 12 degrees in 7 hours. Wow. I mean, if that's not an efficient piece, and it was way above food safety. I mean, we were putting stuff in there at about 185 degrees.
Okay.
So the food safety wasn't an issue. Now it's like, okay, how do we rinse and repeat? And so that's all of these companies have helped with how we're able to do that.
Yeah.
And you know, we just continue to plug in companies that way. You know, if there's anybody that works for RAM that watches this, that'd be a great one. No, you think about all the equipment that we pull in. These days, right? I mean, we're bringing in smokers, but now it's tractor trailers, right? You know, I own two tractors. I think we're 4. We own 3 53 footers. One's our command center that's a retired NASCAR hauler that we refurbished.
Okay.
The other one's an old moving trailer that we refurbished. They both look like, you'd never guess that they're, built in the mid 90s.
Right.
You put a nice wrap on it and it makes everything look a little bit better. We have a flatbed trailer that has 5, of those old hickory smokers on it.
Yep.
And a diesel generator that Sunbelt Rentals, sponsors. So that fires our entire kitchen. I mean, that thing takes care of all the power for our kitchen, when set up correctly. So we've just continued as we grow to find these folks, and I guess we do a good enough job of not pissing them off or not changing to where they want to look for somebody else,
right? Because
they continue to support us, and generally, with even more generosity. I mean, when Feral Gas owns Blue Rhino, and we got to a point that a little 20-pound cylinder wasn't cutting it with the smokers.
Yeah.
Now we get 125-pound tanks. They look like the big brother version of the small tanks.
Yeah.
And now there's co-branding with Feral Gas on it.
Yeah.
If you go out there and you buy a Blue Rhino exchange tank, we're on every exchange tank except for once a year when they do the Save the Rhinos tanks wrappers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's weird. They are a propane of choice.
That's awesome.
And I'm sure I'm forgetting several of them that make this happen. But I think the key message is that there's so many opportunities. Volunteerism, like I said, I start there, and then I'll work to donations, then to sponsorship.
Yep.
Because I think when people see it on the ground, when they see the impact a hot meal makes in somebody's day, like we feed the first responders. It's not just them,
right?
Because the first responders are coming to that area to take care of the community, and if they don't get food, they can't take care of the community as well.
Yeah.
And that includes line workers, that includes tree service, whoever.
That makes sense.
If they're making a difference in the community, and then we partner with a lot of other nonprofits that are coming in. They're the ones that are mucking out the houses, helping the people get to a point that they can start visually seeing, okay, I am going to rebuild. It's going to be okay, and start moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, one step at a time.
Yeah.
Man.
But, like you said, out of tragedy, things can flourish and you can find new ways to get by and get to the next day and get to the next day.
It kind of sucks that it takes tragedy for many people to rise to the occasion. It's kind of a bummer.
It is.
But on the flip side, it's good that some people do rise to the occasion when there is tragedy.
The other day I was sitting there talking, and there, we were out there. It was that first 72 hours, and I said, use the old adage, hey, you're just going to have to embrace the suck right now, and we're going to have to move through it because there's too many people that need us.
Yeah.
There's too many people that need a hot meal right now, and we could just call it quits for the day because we're tired and everything else, or we could sit down, grab a bottle of water, grab something to eat, take a few minutes to relax for a little bit, and then we can get back out there for a couple hours and get a little further ahead.
It's amazing. Well, it's what you're doing is incredible. And someone who's a recipient of, this, what you call it, cooking therapy?
Culinary therapy.
Culinary therapy,
Cooking
yeah.
therapy, culinary therapy,
Culinary
barbecue
therapy. It's, it's real. And then for all the people who are gonna, poop on you for using propane and wood, I've actually tasted the barbecue and it's pretty damn good. So I'll go ahead and throw that out there as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Look, as you're looking at what we're doing, I'm looking at bringing in pitmasters from all over the country.
Yeah,
and when we're at the camp, there's going to be more live fire that's going to be happening. There's going to be more opportunity, and as we continue to grow that side of it, we're going to bring people back.
Yeah,
I hope to have you back. In the future, I hope I want to commingle it. I want to get to a point that we have first responders and veterans out there.
That'd be cool.
We have young adults, with the older adults, and that opportunity to cross bond.
Yeah,
because I think that there's power in having the dads together, but then there's power in having the dads, with the kids.
Yeah,
that lost the dads
for sure.
And being able to see both sides of it. And have the kids see that too, because I think I hate to admit it, and my kid will probably never watch this, so but I learned a lot from him. 21 years old.
Yeah, that's spectacular. Well, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for what you do for sure, and I know that there are tens and hundreds of thousands of other people who are. It's really incredible, and like I said, what you're doing, what you've done. You continue to do, and all the volunteers. Everybody that I met is just incredible people, man.
Well, they again, having a heart to give and wanting to give back is a big part of it.
Yeah,
I think it's something many people don't know they have in them, but when they find it, man, it becomes powerful.
Yeah, that's well said. All right, so the last question then, which you may or may not want to answer, but when you're in Austin, is there a must-see, a must-have barbecue meal while you're here?
So,
and that's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question, So I've had the opportunity, to personally sit there with Aaron at a competition that he decided to take his hand at, and had more brisket than I think half the competitors around him to make sure he had the right one. But getting to try his barbecue right off of his pit, not standing in line for 8 hours or something.
Yeah.
The one that I haven't had, of all of them would be Snow's.
Okay.
I haven't been over there. I've met Miss Tootsie. I've got to talk with Miss Tootsie many times, but I haven't got to go there and see her in action.
I haven't been there yet either.
Hayes County Barbecue, the family that owns that, they've moved. They sold the location that they were at. They're moving. So I don't know if they're back open yet. They're great people.
Okay.
And they have great barbecue,
awesome.
down in San Marcos. When I lived in Round Rock, I don't know if I told you that before, but
yes.
I lived in Round Rock for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so, I hit a bunch of the places, each one's a little bit different. But as everybody, that question's loaded, right? But, the bigger loaded question is, who has the best barbecue? And I'll go ahead and answer it, because when it comes to a beef rib or brisket, it's going to be Texas. It is. I travel all over the country.
Yeah.
If somebody says who has the best whole hog sandwich, I'm going to tell you it's North Carolina. It's a little town. A friend of mine gave me the best bite of pig I ever had in my life. He hand pulled it and everything. But if we're talking about burn ends, no one understands it like Kansas City does, right? You get into Memphis and Mississippi in that area. Ribs are I love Texas ribs, but they're not the same as Memphis ribs. So you cannot, there's not apples to apples in that area.
Yeah.
But that's what I think makes barbecue even more spectacular is, you can go from one place to the other, and Kansas City might be your favorite or Texas might be your favorite. But if you're a purist, you're going to go, holy cow.
Yeah.
Those ribs were some of the best ribs, or that whole hog, or I never thought I liked vinegar sauce, or whatever it is. But I will tell you, the most spectacular thing I've ever seen is, Sam Jones and his team up in North Carolina with a whole hog. And I watched him take a handful of salt, throw it in the belly of a pig, handful of pepper, throw it in the belly area of the pig as he's pulling out the ribs or getting ready. And then taking white vinegar, hot sauce, pour over that, take it, start chopping it up, mixing it together, handing it to you, and it's like heaven. And if I did that, it would taste like salt, vinegar, and hot sauce.
Right.
I'm like, how did you do that? I watched you do it, but I know if I just did what you did, it wouldn't taste the same. And and that is, one of the most spectacular things. A beef rib to me is one of the pinnacles of the barbecue side.
Sure.
They're probably, my visit here in Austin, there's probably a beef rib somewhere in my future before I leave here.
Good.
There's probably some, Tex-Mex in my future before I leave here.
Good call.
So
maybe a breakfast taco or two.
Well, the one place that, probably will get more hate from if I say it, but, Rudy's Barbecue I've never had bad. It's never been the best barbecue.
Right.
But, when you're jonesing, if you're on the road and all of a sudden you see it in Oklahoma and you're like, hey, there's a Rudy's Barbecue.
Yeah.
And guess what? They have breakfast tacos. There's just one of those things.
Yeah.
Now, when you're here, I'm not going there for a breakfast taco in the morning because I know there's about a dozen other places.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's definitely. I'm not going to be on a pilgrimage of barbecue.
No.
After what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks.
I totally understand that. Yeah.
But a taco. Yeah, I think that there's probably some of those in my future.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Tex-Mex is always a good call.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Stan, thank you so much, man.
I greatly appreciated it. And anything I can do, in the future, and. I will tell you that the guys on the coffee side said send more the Mexican chocolate coffee. So,
I'll let the guys in Roasty Buds know, man. I'll send some down for sure.
appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Stan.